What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Off Field, an exciting one. The Broncos had their first round draft pick yesterday. I'm Nate Jackson. He's Brandon Krisztal, and Off Field is powered by Accurate America. Bam.
Hello and welcome in.
Please do not leave your luggage unattended on the station.
Welcome to the show.
Do not leave your luggage unattended. Welcome to the show. It's Off Field. Denver Broncos selected. Who did they select, Brandon?
Jadhae Baron.
Jahdae Baron, cornerback, or jack of all trades.
Defensive joker?
Defensive joker. You can never have too many jokers.
You can't.
And,
Jokers are wild.
And we talked about this yesterday. And our friend Conga Hydra brought his name up and said, what if the Broncos draft him? And you didn't think he'd be available.
Nobody did, including the Broncos. That's the first thing that George Payton said right off the top. We're going to hear from George and Sean in just a few minutes.
That's right.
They didn't think he'd be available. And I understand that this has happened with the Broncos with Bradley Chubb in the past, who, had he stayed healthy, Bradley Chubb would be wearing a gold jacket. He may get there someday. But
You think so?
12 and a half sacks as a rookie, there's no reason that you don't think a guy builds on that.
Mm-hmm.
Or 12 sacks, sorry. And so when you've got a guy that you don't think is going to be there, I'm not sure they thought Pat Surtain would be there when they took him at 9.
Yeah.
The Panthers helped him by taking J.C. Horn a pick ahead.
Yeah.
And so I think when you've got the best player on your board by a wide margin, and that's what Sean described, that they had to wait like 6 picks, that they couldn't pass him up and add just another key piece, key contributor to the Vance Joseph defense. It's already one of the best in the league.
Yeah, we're going to be breaking down the Broncos' first-round draft pick. We're going to be breaking down the possibilities today and tomorrow. And we're also going to have Jake Plummer joining us in about 15 minutes to give us his perspective on the draft and what happened yesterday and what's going to happen going forward, maybe some of his draft day memories there. But just to stick with Jaded Baron a little bit, because, we talked extensively about whether or not this was going to be a best player available type of draft or a position of need. Clearly they went with best player available, Brandon. And I love it. I love the philosophy. There's some people out there in the media who are hating on it right now, which I find bananas. People in the media make their picks, right? They say this is what they need and this is what they should do. And when they don't do that, they say, wow, the Broncos are stupid. How could they not do the thing that I said they should do? Me sitting in a booth, talking in a microphone, having none of the information that the guys actually making the decision have. To me, you add a football player of his caliber, it makes everyone on the team better. Everyone on the team better. The rising tide lifts all the boats. I use this example all the time with Champ Bailey. When Champ Bailey came in, he made us all better because we got to play against him every day. I got to get better as a receiver practicing against Champ every day. His DBs got to get better watching the way he came to work. The quarterback got to get better because he has to play against Champ every day. The coaches got better because they got to coach against Champ or get to watch, because a lot of times, your coach can't tell you everything. He can't tell you everything to do. Sometimes you need players to be the examples. And this is a young guy, so he's not going to come in and be, some kind of veteran presence. But his work ethic, the type of guy he is, from all accounts, we talked about it last night during our awesome broadcast, Brandon. Let's give a shout out to everybody.
Megacast.
Yeah.
It was huge.
Yeah, Megacast last night. It was like a 6-hour broadcast.
6-hour broadcast. Over 15,000 people joined us throughout it.
Yeah, in Johnson Auto Plaza.
Shout out to our pals at Johnson Auto Plaza, just north of C470.
Yeah.
Yeah, go see Johnson Auto Plaza for your auto needs.
Need
a new car? Go check them out.
But I want to throw something at you because here's what I had an epiphany last night, Brandon.
Okay.
And here was that epiphany. Okay. A lot of people thought that you gotta do an offensive player. And Sean Payton was going to draft an offensive player with his first round pick. I think that Sean Payton knows that between him and Vance Joseph, he's the better coordinator. He has more experience. He's smarter. He's better. He does this thing better. I think Sean believes that. And I think it's probably true. And so if he is the head coach, which he is, and he also runs the offense, he's probably thinking a way to balance out the difference between my skill and Vance's skill is to give him more talented players so he can work with guys who have more talent, and I can work with guys maybe down the draft more, but get more out of them because I'm smarter.
I think there's some of that. And I think there's also a scenario where this defense is loaded, and there's no reason to think if everyone's healthy, they won't have a similar type season in terms of production and be one of the top teams in the league, getting to the quarterback, take the ball away from the other team, really good on third down, good on fourth down, and all of that. And that Vance Joseph will be a strong candidate to be a head coach. And they retain Jim Leonard as one of the many associate head coaches. And that defense will be in great shape personnel-wise for Jim Leonard to take over if VJ gets another job. But I think that there is maybe something to that. And we know that Sean loves finding value in later rounds in Marcus Colston undrafted, or we know that Alvin Kamara came in the third round, guys like that. And so
Michael Thomas, I think, was the second round guy.
And we could probably go down that list for a bunch of guys that Sean wants to find. That's why he drafted Cam Jordan in the first round. I mean, I know he got Mark Ingram as well, but he wants to load up front in those early rounds with kind of can't miss glue guys, and then sprinkle in the Jimmy Grahams of the world that you find as a steal in the draft as well. And so I think that he's looking forward to day 2 and day 3, especially when he tells us this is when, and we heard that going in, that like spots 20 to 70, you're going to get a good player, maybe not a Hall of Famer, but a really good player.
Yeah. It's one guy they've got so far. They're going to add 6 more in the draft, a bunch of free agents. There's going to be 90 dudes in that locker room in about a month, or even less than that.
Yeah. A couple weeks.
And so this one guy, we don't know how he's going to pan out, but the Broncos decided to use their number 20 selection on a corner. Not a lot of folks saw it happening. I did, but not a lot of folks did. But Jahdae Baron is now a member of the Denver Broncos, and we got some cool reaction videos. Why don't we play the video of Jahdae Baron and his family and his friends reacting to that pick?
In the 2025 NFL Draft, the Denver Broncos select Jaded Baron.
What a moment. Everyone in there's like, we're going to Denver. He's like, what do you mean we?
I'll see you when we play the Texans or the Cowboys.
Yeah, I'm going to Denver. See all those people with their phones up recording it? Do you think they'll ever go back and watch that?
I think about that every time I go to a concert, and I've got so many concerts, favorite songs of a band that I'm seeing on a given
Everybody's
night.
in front of me.
Well, but me specifically.
Oh,
I'm
really?
like, when am I going to go back and watch this?
Did you go back and watch it?
No, but I thought about editing it all together, like just doing one after another.
What are you doing? Oh, just watching videos I took
Mumford
of a
and
concert
Sons
I was
from
at.
12 years ago,
Yeah.
Red Rocks or whatever. But they probably, I don't know. Some of them might. They at least might share it around with people
No,
that
I
weren't
know.
there.
I know.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
exactly.
But
They'll send texts to their friends who
Yeah.
weren't there. But incredible moment for Jahdae Baron. People had him going a little higher, but you end up making it on a team that's has a vision, right? I mean, you got to be happy making it to the Denver Broncos right now.
he's the Jim Thorpe Award winner as the best defensive back in college football. I think you could make a case for Travis Hunter. We understand that, as Travis won every other award. But here's some of his numbers against other Power 4 defensive backs. So across all the Power 4 conferences, he was number 1 in yards allowed at only 7.7 in yards per reception. Gave up 0 TDs in 5, I guess, attempts near the goal, but he was never beaten for a TD. So first in that ranking. Passer rating against him, first in all Power 4 conferences, 34.2 passer rating against him. And first downs allowed, only 11 all season, first in that metric.
So why do people have a problem with him winning the Jim Thorpe Award over Travis Hunter? Travis Hunter clearly didn't have those kind of numbers.
No, because his production was solid, and he obviously cut the field in half, but he didn't necessarily have those numbers. I don't think Travis had. He didn't have five picks, did he? Because this kid, I think, had 5 picks.
Yeah, he had 5.
I know Travis had a few for sure. And so when you're saying just the very best defensive back, I don't think a lot of people are losing sleep. I certainly don't think Travis is.
Yeah.
But I just think when you're winning the Heisman, you're winning all these other awards. Although Heisman, because of what he did on offense and defense. As far as DBs go, this kid was the best. A lot of people like Will Johnson, who's kind of everyone's top player available today. But his knee issues that clearly everyone from the combine saw, all the teams saw when they looked at the kid, pushed a guy that was projected to go between 10 and 15 all the way to the second round.
Well, we've also got some video of him making some plays out there, right? Let's see some of his college tape there. Jahdae Baron. Hey!
When they say he just has a nose for the football, and that shows up on tape no matter what. and a really solid tackler, as we can see.
He's a different number. He was 23,
and then he was 7. Yeah.
Okay.
I know this. He's not wearing 7 in Denver. Go ahead and mark that down.
What if John Elway gave him his blessing?
John's like, you know what, Jahdae? I think it's time. There he is in the big house against Michigan.
Oh, staying with him.
That was Colston Loveland, by the way.
So this is a tackler. And you mentioned his stats, the fewest yards per catch. That means he knows how to tackle. That means he comes up and will not let the guy make a miss. And that's huge part of today's NFL. It's being able to keep everything in front of you and come up and make those tackles. And Riley Moss is a good tackler.
Runs well. I mean, Riley has a track background.
Yeah,
but do you like the comparison? And not body for body. He's a little bigger than our pal Chris Harris Jr. And Chris was going to join us, but something came up, and so we'll talk to Chris again soon. Chris really liked him. I remember on Weird the Harrises when he was talking about corners as they were kind of winding the season down. He said he really liked Will Johnson. He's like, I love the Barron kid from Texas. I remember he told Ryan and Shelby that during the season. And the reason I say he reminds me of Chris is Chris was a great tackler, but on base downs, Chris was out there opposite of Champ or opposite of Talib. And then when they went to nickel, a lot of times, almost every time, Chris would jump inside. So it feels like on first down in an obvious base set situation with your defense, he will be opposite of PS2. And then Riley Moss is going to come in and they'll decide based on the personnel, because if the number 2 receiver is maybe smaller, maybe he stays outside with a smaller guy. He does run 4.39 though, and that's faster than Chris was. Anyone that's sub 4.4, you'll take him anywhere on the field, but especially when you got to cover receivers.
Yeah, I do think, it's going to be a competition to see who starts opposite Pat Surtain. I don't think they're going to give it to this kid. I think Riley Moss has done enough to at least deserve to compete with a rookie. You never know how a rookie's going to respond to your system, to a new city. He's going to be healthy, So I think it'll be a competition. Interesting to see what happens with Jaquan McMillian, right? His contract's up next year. Is that right?
Yeah, and the sense I get is that they like him, but they don't love him. And they liked how he played 2 years ago more than what they saw last year. And not that he regressed. I just don't know if he made enough progress to cement himself as the nickelback forever, for 5 years or whatever. And so that's just, talking to people there in the building that he didn't have the best year. And obviously PS2 has a great year, but he didn't have the best year. And so I think that ultimately you have to do what's best for your team. And even though Riley's really a really good prospect, if this kid should start ahead of him on base downs, you do it. And if Riley needs to play inside the whole time, you do that too.
As our buddy Holy Diver says, Mathis now is our number 6 corner. All other 5 have a shot at starting opposite Surtain. I mean, in theory, yeah. You go into training camp, who's the better player? That should exist, I think, at every position. Every position there should be a competition. You never know. Are you on FaceTime right now?
My wife and kiddo are in the mountains, and so I turned it off, and then it just opened.
Oh.
So I'm just waving at them. But I'm listening.
So they're watching you right now.
They're watching me, and I'm watching them on the mountain.
Okay.
Last day on the hill.
Oh, they're literally skiing.
No school because Douglas County didn't use a snow day. So there you go.
All right. Well, let's hear from Jaded Baron. He was interviewed right after that pick, and
her name popped up. I was like, uh-oh, this secondary is about to be crazy.
It's loaded.
Yeah,
it's loaded. I mean, I'm tremendous. I'm excited to be able to play with a great defense. They were already great. Mm-hmm. It's my job, to find my role and to own my role and to master my craft, just like they master their craft, and add value. Mm-hmm. So I told the coaches it was an investment. It was an investment getting me, and they're gonna get everything they got out of me. And I'm going to make sure I bring it every single day for them. I'm representing the Jim Thorpe Committee, representing Texas, representing my mother, representing my family. So I'm just ready to dominate.
Yeah, I listened to that call, and you asked them to put you on speaker.
Yeah.
Well, why did you say that, and then what did you tell to that draft room in Denver?
Man, I just wanted to thank everybody. It's crazy, emotionally, all the way, tears that hadn't hit me yet. Mm-hmm. I've been taking pictures of everybody and stuff. It really ain't even got a chance to just sit down and just wow. Yeah. But I wanted to tell everybody thank you, man. They changed my mom's life completely. They just changed my mom's life. That one call right there changed my mom's life forever. She just me growing up, she having to take me to practice, take my brothers to practice, take my little sister to this, and make us happy, and then go work 2 jobs. Like, it was stressful for her. So just for her to, like, she's done work. She don't got to no more. You ain't got to clock in. So just for her to have the ability just to enjoy being a mother, you know, that's one of the greatest gifts, you know, to being a mother to kids. So she gets to finally enjoy that. So I'm happy for her.
Pretty incredible how quickly your life changes and what you're able to do for your family. And it's cool to see guys like him talk about what it's a selfless moment. He's not thinking about himself. He's thinking about what he's going to do for his mom now, and that she doesn't have to go back to work. It's pretty cool.
We got to thank Corey Mose from KBUE down there in Austin, who was the gentleman interviewing him and sat there from before the draft. And there's video that's out there that Jaddae, as I was just getting out of the car, reacted to. He held a little Bible study before the draft started with everybody that was at his house. So those same people that you saw reacting, they were going over, you know, one of their favorite Bible verses. And you can tell that he's a team captain, as we talked about last night. And in case you didn't see it, I was like, without even looking, I can almost guarantee this kid's a team captain.
Yeah.
And he was. He's just one of those guys. But that he, moments before the biggest night of his life is about to happen. And mind you, Texas played in the national championship 2 years ago and had a playoff run this past year. But that this is the biggest night of his life. And he's like, well, let's make sure that, you know, we get our little Bible study in.
Yeah.
We got everybody here. He's just that kind of kid. He said he reached out to PS2 last week, but didn't get a hold of him.
Oh, really? Better get a hold of him now.
I imagine Pat will take his call or almost certainly has already reached out.
Yeah, I was listening to an interview with his defensive coordinator, and he talked about how he's a very confident kid. Loves, like he was talking there, but he wants to master his craft. He really cares about getting better. He has a short memory when it comes to the mistakes he made. You know, so DBs are going to get beat. Even Pat Surtain gets beat
3 times it's happened that I can remember.
Yeah, exactly.
Twice against Devontae Adams a couple of years ago. But it happens.
And then after he did, people were like, "Whoa, was he really that good?" Oh yeah, he is. He got Defensive Player of the Year, dorks.
But back to that thing about changing your mom's life. Because
Yeah.
Deion said the same thing when we talked to him last week.
Yeah.
And he said it, I think he said it when he was I think he said it on the Colbert Show a couple weeks ago or months ago, whenever that was. But he's talked about that a lot. That kid's life and his family's life was going to change, but the appreciation that you have for the people that actually make it happen.
Yeah.
And I think about conversations that I've had with Alfred Williams over the years. And Big Al thought he was coming to the Broncos, thought they were going to take him. That was the indication. And then they took Mike Kroll from Nebraska, and he slides into the teens. And the Bengals' first 4 years, the 4 years I was there, it was not a fun 4 years. They'd been in the Super Bowl a couple of years earlier.
Yeah.
This was not that team.
Right.
But he has nothing but love and appreciation for Mike Brown and the Bengals, because as he says, they made me a first-round pick, and they made him a millionaire.
Yeah.
And same with Deion. Like, Deion didn't stay in Atlanta, obviously,
Right.
but he'll always have appreciation for the Falcons organization because they did truly change his mom's life. And for Jaded Baron, same thing. His mom, who, you know, like you heard him say, taking him to football practices all over the place, working 2 jobs, taking care of his sisters as well. And now he knows that it's official. He'll be a Denver Bronco, and he can make sure that she lives in the house she wants to live in and drives the car she wants and never has to work another day in her life. And that's awesome.
Yeah, it's the beauty of the NFL, you know, and by all accounts, they got themselves a winner in Jahdae. Speaking of winners, you never know when and where the hail is going to hit, right? Summer storm, boom, it's pummeling your house. The last thing you want is to get caught scrambling when that does happen. So make that call before the storm, okay? Call Accurate America. They'll partner with you on navigating insurance, which is a pain. We've all been there. They'll provide a quick, professional, and knowledgeable service using the latest 3D technology modeling. Their work is guaranteed as long as you own your home, guys. So don't scramble at the last minute. Call Accurate America, 303-900-ROOF. That's 303-900-ROOF before the storm. Accurate America. And we thank our sponsors. We love our sponsors.
Love
here.
them. Love them.
Here.
And again,
Thank you,
Johnson
brother.
Auto Plaza bringing us our draft weekend coverage as well as some of our Nuggets playoff coverage.
And crushed it last night.
Absolutely.
With the coverage. It was a 6-hour broadcast into the Nuggets stuff. That was pretty. Nuggets weren't so great, though.
Not great.
No.
Yeah, and Liv certainly wasn't happy with it as a huge Nuggets fan. But I did catch all of the post-game comments, and you got to appreciate Coach owning it, him shutting his guys down.
Yeah.
Once he was like, this is just not happening. I need to think about Saturday. He's like,
Yeah.
you obviously have to think about today, but we're trying to win tonight's game, but we're also trying to get in this series, get back in it, even it up.
Yeah.
So,
well, we shall see. But we got a couple days of drafts to get excited about. And while we wait for Jake Plummer, who's going to join us any minute now, what'd you make of Shador sliding out of the first round? And Shelby thinks they might be the Browns might be drafted him right at the top of the second. But what'd you make of that?
Well, I think that this is where you have to at least understand the way football evaluators, personnel people, coaches look at players. Just because a player has a lot of hype around them or has a great college career doesn't mean that the entire league sees him that way. I can think back to Tim Tebow.
Yeah.
The Broncos had a first-round grade on him, clearly. Josh McDaniels liked what he saw in Tim Tebow. Well, it turns out Tim couldn't play quarterback in the NFL, and we understand that. I'm not saying that that's the case with Shador. It's just to automatically assume that a guy is a first-rounder. Well, some people certainly had a first-round grade on him, but plenty of people didn't. And maybe some of the teams that have a first-round grade on him didn't need a quarterback.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's going to be interesting. If the Browns don't take him with one of those two picks, and if I'm the
What
Saints,
do they have? 33?
they have the number one pick at 33, and then just a couple teams, Texans, Titans, then they pick again. So first and fourth in this second round. But the other thing, too, about him dropping in the second round, you're going to get a kid now with an even bigger chip on his shoulder than he may have had, trying to get out of his dad's shadow. The Raiders are right behind the Browns at 5. Does Tom Brady then take a chance on a guy that he knows really well there? The pressure's just less in the second round.
Yeah.
You're no longer a first-round pick. You want to know all the second-rounders in the Hall of Fame? Because I can tell you real quick.
Drew Brees?
Well, Brett Favre and then Drew Brees when he gets his gold jacket. We're done. That's the end of the list.
Aren't there only 7 in the first round?
From the first round. But the point is that, and there's less, if we go through the league right now, there's less starters that are second-round picks.
These days, especially
it's
because
first
they just
round.
give the chances to the first round guys,
You just get a chance and another chance. But, like, Geno may not play forever, so the Raiders could be a good spot. Even Cleveland could be an interesting spot. You don't know what's going on with Deshaun. You got Flacco there. You got Kenny Pickett. If you're a team like the Saints and you have them there to battle with whoever else is there, or are you – if I'm the Saints and I know I'm Kellen Moore, who's not losing his job after a year, and Mickey Loomis is never losing his job apparently, GM for life, Arch Manning's likely going to be in this next draft, so I don't need to mess around with Shador.
Arch Manning's going to be in the draft. He hasn't even played yet, has he?
He played a handful of games this year because of
but
yours.
not much. Don't you need some more experience?
Worked for Cam Newton.
I guess if your name is Manning.
But if he has all the tools, he's 3 years
Cam
out.
Newton played junior college football. He had snaps.
No, Arch had snaps this year. He had to play a couple games when you were out.
No, I mean, prior to this year, he has none.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's only a sophomore. So
that's what I'm saying. So you said one season of starting, he'll be ready to go.
If he plays all 14 to 16 games, they make a run into the playoff. He may not need more college football. He's not going because he needs money. It's because, okay, I'm good enough to be the first pick. And if I'm the Saints, I'm at least thinking about that. But other teams that, are picking up high, Bears, Patriots, Titans obviously don't need a quarterback. Texans have C.J. Stroud. The Jets at 10 all of a sudden gets more interesting. The Cowboys at 12. The Colts, they want competition. And so we know that obviously it's Anthony Richardson's job to lose. And then this is a team I'm looking at. They traded back last night. The Rams at 14.
Yeah.
Matthew Stafford's not going to be there forever. Sean McVay, I think, would happily have Shador there to learn how to play NFL quarterback in his offense. And so I think that there's a bunch of teams that get more interesting in there. Seattle at 18.
Well, there's clearly a question mark as to whether or not it's for real. The Shador Sanders hype and really the hysteria around that program over the last 2 years. Travis and Shador were offered up by Dion as a package deal, and clearly the NFL does not see them on the same plane.
What if the Jaguars take him? Trevor Lawrence isn't quarterback for life. He's got a big deal.
You think the Jags might take him?
It becomes a bigger circus, but the Jags have turned into a bit of a circus anyway with the way they approach things.
Yeah. As far as I
don't think they will. I'm just throwing out.
I don't love the Jags getting Travis because of the inexperienced coaching staff.
Right. You got a brand new staff, a 34-year-old brand new GM.
Yeah.
Tony Baselli is in the Hall of Fame, but that's because he was a really great player. He's been in the radio booth for the last 15 years.
Yeah.
And coached high school football really well. Coached his kid to a D1 scholarship. But now Tony's there also as part of that brain trust. But you're right. So you have 3 guys that have never done the jobs they're doing.
Yeah.
and how exactly you're going to use Travis.
Yeah. Well, I think we've got a guy who might know a thing or two about playing quarterback in the NFL. Jake Plummer. What's up, dude?
Hey, what's going on, you guys?
How are you, man?
The draft, right? That's what's happening.
That is what's
That
happening.
is, yeah. Did you get to see it last night? Did you see the corner they got, Jaded Baron?
Yeah, I was about to think they were going to, a little shocked, but I think from hearing what I've heard on the talks afterwards, they've got the best possible player to fill like numerous roles on defense, which I love that. Sounds like a Buda Baker type player, a guy that just makes plays, so good job by them.
From a quarterback perspective, because you were on the team when we got Champ Bailey, right? Like, people think that when you draft or get a player, it's just like, oh, this guy, he exists in a vacuum. You have a need at cornerback. Is he going to make the cornerbacks better? But to me, when Champ came, he made everybody better, right? So if there's a really good DB you get to practice against every day, what does that do for a quarterback and for the offense?
I've had great DBs and corners play with some of the best. I mean, Aeneas Williams lined up against him for a few years in Arizona, got to throw the ball in practice, in OTAs, in mini camps, and everything against Champ Bailey, so not bad when you look at, the ability as a quarterback to go and whether he's going 100 in practice or not, you're getting one of the best cover corners in the league that dials you in. So, I'm not getting away with a sloppy throw in one-on-ones. If I'm 6 inches off, he's going to break it up. Okay, I got to dial that in. So the more you can practice dialing it in when you have to on game day and there's live action and you got to move and your foot doesn't plant, you still can dial that in. A guy like Champ helps you, get to that point, get to that level, because practice is not as intense as it used to be. But, I sat with a young man who was in the first year of no two-a-days in the NFL. Yeah. And like, what a beautiful thing. No, here, let's stop breaking you down, beating you up, testing your manhood right before 16-week season. Like the stupidest thing ever, two-a-days. Necessary, though, to some degree, but also unnecessary. So getting to practice is important against other good players. And this kid, he's a rookie. He's going to come in here and have to still learn. But from what I hear, he can play all over the board on covering, whether that's nickel, dime. Hopefully, he can help slow down some of these fast tight ends, these different dynamic tight ends. So I think that their defense can get better, the Broncos, and with a good defense win championships. So good move.
Well, so Snake, before we look ahead to what the Broncos might do today and even into the weekend, the conversation we were having right as you came on was about Shedeur Sanders, a guy that's right up the road from you there in Boulder, playing his college ball. You were a great college player, not a great quarterback draft the year you came out. I went and just checked it. Do you know the one quarterback that went ahead of Jake?
Druckenmiller.
Yeah,
dude.
your hometown Niners took Druckenmiller. We know his career unfortunately turned out for him. But so I'm sure there were plenty of people that told you were going to be a first-round pick as the best college player, or at least the possibility of it, but you end up going in the second round. What does that do for, especially at that position, for a player? Because I don't think it slowed your career down at all, but for a guy that thought he was going to be a first rounder, perhaps top 5, top 10, to now slide. And I think the pressure is way off in the modern NFL for a second rounder than it might have been for you going to Arizona after playing college ball there.
Well, put it this way. When I didn't realize even, getting drafted in the NFL was going to really be a thing until someone asked me after my junior year if I was coming out and entering the draft early. I thought, whoa, I'm actually draft worthy. Okay. So I wasn't considering myself a number one pick, first QB off the board my entire college career, or even my last year of playing at Arizona State. I was balling my ass off to win a national championship. And I think that's why I was able to get drafted as high as I was, because back then, that was really the last year that the prototypical quarterback was the safe draft, like 6'4", 230 pounds. We can't draft this 6'2", 195-pound kid. He's fragile. Oh, yeah, that's right. I started and played in 42-plus consecutive games at ASU, never left the field once with an injury. I was fragile for the league due to the fact that guys in suits that eat donuts and drink coffee all day want to pontificate about some kid's ability to play at the next level. This day and age, I would have been in top 10 pick. And I'm not saying I was top 10 worthy. I'm just saying as a quarterback, what I did my senior year, as I displayed and put on my leadership qualities and did what I did at the Shrine, at the Senior Bowl, even at the Combine, I would have been a top 10 pick, no doubt. But back then I was too small, not durable enough, not the prototypical QB. And then after I had success and Jeff Garcia had some success and a few other young, like smaller guys, then you got a guy like Cade McNown getting drafted number 12 out of UCLA. I mean, Cade wasn't a first-round draft pick. He was pretty damn good quarterback, but he wasn't a first top 12 pick. But that's when the overdrafting of quarterbacks happened. You can't miss on these guys. And, now we see guys that are deemed a failure because they slipped to the second round. I didn't give a damn about the first round. I wanted to go to a team more than anything. Like the Niners would have been amazing to go play for them, or the Chiefs. I was so excited. And then they signed Elvis Gerback. And so I knew I wasn't a first rounder. And going to 12th pick in the second round, hell yeah. 42nd player off the board. I just wanted the chance. So I had a different mindset completely than Shedeur Sanders. I didn't have a party planned. I didn't have a big event planned around my selection. I was hanging out in a hotel room with my homies from Arizona State, Derek Rogers, Juan Roque, guys that were going to get drafted because Lee Steinberg was our agent. And yeah, getting drafted was my next chance.
There are a lot of Niner fans who were hoping you were going to go to the Niners too. And then after the fact, when, Druckenmiller did what he did, had just wondered what could have been if Jake Plummer had been drafted to the 49ers, and probably would have had a long storied career there. But then you and I would have never, I guess I did play for the Niners for a second. So we would have been teammates for briefly, but
never know what could have happened, man.
Yeah, you're right. But you mentioned the overdrafting of quarterbacks, right? So maybe this is water just kind of finding its level and correcting itself after several years in a row of overdrafting quarterbacks and having them not pan out. Like, last year, 6 quarterbacks went in the top 12. It was pretty insane. And for the last 5 years, there's been 3 quarterbacks in the top 10 and maybe one of them hits, and the rest of the guys end up going to a bad team that obviously has a lot of holes to fill, but thinks we're going to draft a quarterback with this pick and he's going to fix all our problems. You went to a team that had some holes to fill, right, in Arizona. What was that like to be a rookie quarterback thrown in there and kind of be tasked with trying to turn around the organization? On top of that, do you agree that maybe Shedeur sliding and not, 5 quarterbacks going to the top 10 is indicative of GMs and coaches starting to figure out what you were just saying?
There's so many layers to that, because you don't want to pass up on a chance for some young man that could be the guy. But they do their homework nowadays. And there's, in that building up at CU are numerous Hall of Famers and next level athletes and performers coming in and out of that door. So you can get associated with that to a degree where you may be a little inflated on your value, how valuable you are. I know that Shedeur will know how to carry himself as a pro and do all the things. And but I don't know him personally as a young man. And so the research gets done and the going in and see this, they're not doing this blindly. They've made their choice. To me, the overdrafting happens and you see the similar teams always in the top 10 drafting, right? And they keep taking a stab at a quarterback. Well, maybe you should have got that, dynamic receiver that makes a mediocre quarterback even better. A great game-changing receiver can take a decent quarterback and make him a lot better. And so, there's a need for players in a lot of positions. And so when I got to Arizona, I didn't being that high of a pick. I think any other team, I had a lot of other teams interested. There wasn't a lot of pressure on me. I mean, there were 2 guys in front of me. I was third string. I was a rookie quarterback. Everybody was chomping at the bit to see me because they just saw me have a dynamic run at Arizona State, and it was so exciting. They didn't want it to end. Right. And then it got a chance to start again my rookie year. And so I ended up having a pretty decent end of my rookie year, which again opened the door up for poor Jim Druckenmiller to get a lot of like slack for him not coming in and doing the same thing.
Yeah.
But I went to an organization that, I didn't know at the time, but found out hadn't been to the playoffs in like 14 years. They hadn't won a playoff game in 49 years. And so the exciting part for me was, okay, there's not like 10 quarterbacks they're talking about that have played here. They didn't just lose Joe Montana. There wasn't anybody, superstar Hall of Famer that had just left the Cardinals. Boomer Esiason played a little for him and whatnot. So I was coming into a position to go make my mark. And so that was exciting for me. And the guys on that team, they'd watched me at Arizona State. They liked what I came in with. And, I I didn't come in as a multimillionaire,
Yeah.
And that's sort of like a pecking order in the NFL is you got to pay your dues when you get to the league to get that money to some degree. You got to make it. And now these kids are coming out of college. Shadeur, I don't know what he makes. I've heard.
I think he made $10 million.
Yeah, he's got 10 million of his own dollars in the bank, not his dad's money.
Yeah.
It's money that he was paid for being himself, being a good quarterback.
He's got a nest egg. He's got life financial security already. Is he driven and hard driving to like go make a living and feed his family and be the best in the game, or just be legendary and be the best in the game? That's a different drive. Just your ego driving you to get all that recognition, or I'm putting food in my family's mouths. That's more like that drives you insanely. So it's a different athlete coming out these days. So it's a hit or miss.
Well, and I'm curious too. You said other teams were interested in you. Chiefs would have made obvious sense. We get that. That was they'd just come off those couple good seasons with Joe Montana and had a pretty good roster. And you would have been in the same class with Tony Gonzalez. That would have been a good guy to throw to start your career. But and didn't go to the Niners. So you end up playing college ball in the stadium where you just obviously played 42 straight games in college, gone to a Rose Bowl. How much did your life even really change? Did you stay in the same, did you move off campus, or did you just kind of stay there with a much nicer check and you weren't going to class anymore? You were going to the office.
Yeah. I moved out of my apartment with, or my little house with roommates, and got a place myself, and bought my mom a car, had money in the bank account. Now I was signing autographs. It was really cool. At first, I did not want to stay in Arizona. I wanted out. I wanted to go somewhere else. I'd been there. Tempe, Phoenix area is a beautiful place to visit. I like to go down there. I don't see myself possibly ever living there. I never say never, but I'm more pulled to the mountains and the lakes and the trees, pine trees. But that switch was very nice. It was easy. I just moved down the road. I had Arizona State people that I could go talk to. I had guys that were still really close and I loved dearly that were still playing at ASU. So I had tons of friends. I knew where all the great restaurants were. I knew where I could go. And it was a seamless transition rather than moving to a new city. And then the excitement started that, Kent Graham was a starter. Stoney Case was the backup. I mean, these guys were decent quarterbacks, but they weren't perennial all pros. So I wasn't going to be sitting for long. And, the idea, for me to go out there and finally take control midway through my rookie year, a lot of that was the fans really wanted to see me play. And I had guys like Larry Centers that I found out once I got to the Cardinals that were going up top into the upstairs saying, you got to draft this kid, because they saw something, like the players saw something in me that they wanted to have on their team. And that really made the transition a lot easier. Being accepted, being seen, being known by a lot of those guys, Lomas Brown, Jameer Miller, Frank Sanders, Rob Moore, they were watching me ball at ASU. So they were like, sweet, let's see what this kid can do at this level. And so I had a lot of help also from the veterans. And there's no regret in what I did there, because, maybe going to another team that had the brass in place and the ability to get to the Super Bowl in repeated eras and times would have been fun, obviously, to fulfill my real childhood dream, which was to get a ring. That's really only reason I played, was to get a Super Bowl ring. But going to the Cardinals did give me a chance to do something that will never be forgotten, ever. And that was that 98 season that the vote passed to build the new stadium, That's the reason that Arizona isn't in LA already or Vegas. And yeah, I was a big part of that. So that draft pick they made turned out to pay a huge price as not the most important thing, but a key cog in that little resurgence they had to win a playoff game for the first time in half of a century. 50 years.
Wow.
Think about that. They hadn't won a playoff game in 50 years.
Wow.
And we
I
did.
didn't know they've been playing playoff games that long.
That was
right,
my
so
Super Bowl, man. That was our Super Bowl, but I didn't get a ring, you know?
So Jaded Baron, a cornerback, gets drafted on a team that has some pretty good cornerbacks. Riley Moss played pretty well last year, got a little banged up, but folks thought, hey, we found our corner opposite Pat Surtain, and he probably was hoping to be that, and he still is hoping to be that, but they drafted a guy who could very well be his replacement. You had to experience a similar experience as a starting quarterback. They drafted your replacement, and it shocked everybody. I'm sure it shocked you. It shocked us on your team. We didn't understand it, but those types of decisions are made. What do you recall from that experience and that draft, learning that Jay Cutler had been drafted?
It was confusing, you know, as I was ready to retire in 2005. I was fully done if we win the Super Bowl. Like, peace out. Thank you. I got what I came for. I got more things to go do. But coming back for that last year, you know, we had everything in place. And, you know, we were missing a few things. Nothing glaring, but we could have added, you know, a top running back or a linebacker to come in and learn from Al and be there to do some other things. I mean, we could have benefited from drafting something else, but we drafted a quarterback. And that's when I knew, it's like, oh, wow, okay, this, you know, my feelings that I was having about being done already were obviously being felt through, you know, other people that could feel that, you know, mostly Shanahan. And, you know, whether he wanted me out or not, it was a narrative that got set, you know, after we didn't make it to the Super Bowl and we got one of the greatest tight ends ever play, Shannon Sharp, speaking out loud about, sorry, Nate,
one of the other
out loud about me not having the ability to take them all the way, verbally, publicly spewing that out of his large mouth. And, you know, that narrative, you know, it gets picked up, and narratives suck because they're just usually spun by someone that wants to start something and has a thought. Some narratives are great, but, you know, that one for me wasn't, because I still was the leader, yet they drafted a quarterback. And I don't care, you know, like Jay, you know, for who he was, what he was, you know, maybe they could have drafted a little more personable guy that was a little bit more like in touch with humans and emotions and compassion. But no offense to him, that's just who he was. He just wasn't that guy. And so, you know,
you know what, Jake, sorry to jump on you, but Shanny didn't really know like the extent of Jay's awkward personality. You know, I don't think anybody sort of knew how he would assimilate or not assimilate. And you take a chance on a guy like that. And that's to Mike's credit, you know, he does talk about how that whole thing was sort of mishandled. And you know, there will always be that question mark as to what would have happened if we wouldn't have done that. Maybe draft just a positional player, like you said, somebody that we need, a running back, a linebacker, someone else, and run it back with a team that was one game away from the Super Bowl, right? And that was a crazy time because Indy was the number 1 seed. We were the number 2 seed. We both had byes. We beat the Patriots at home in one of the most exciting football games we've all ever been a part of. And then the Pittsburgh Steelers beat Indy. So I was like, oh my gosh, they're coming here. We're hosting the AFC Championship game. And the previous 2 seasons, we'd had to go to Indy, and we had to run into that buzzsaw of Peyton Manning and that building, which was incredibly loud. And all of a sudden, we're hosting this game, and it's not against the Colts. And although you took the blame somehow for that loss, the whole team was not like, we weren't up to par that day, you know, like nobody was their best that day. And of course the quarterback has to take all the heat when that happens. Yeah. I mean, that was our moment, our time, our chance. And after that,
we all know what happened. It was the season that came after that was, I put all my heart and soul into it again because I thought like we still have the same team. And then, they made the move, and I don't have any regrets. I'm not upset by it. I used to be, but I'm totally fine with it. When you mentioned, the position at corner now with Moss, Riley Moss, and now Jaded Baron coming in, Riley's just a 1-year starter that had some flashes. Yeah. Whoever comes in is going to be the other guy next to Patrick Surtain because he's one of the best corners you'll see play the game. Yeah. But having another guy that could very well end up being a very dynamic player and making it challenging as a quarterback, knowing like going against Deion Sanders in live games in the NFL, knowing like if I go over there, I better be dialed in to like 100%. But if I don't go there and I got to go over here, damn, I got to go against him too. He's pretty damn good. Not Patrick Surtain, but he's pretty damn good. So whoever that is over there, Moss or Barron, they better be ready and be good because then that defense helps win half the games this year, just the defense alone. Whether Bo Nix plays good or not, thank you, D. We won half our games. Now, if Bo Nix plays good, 4 games, now we're in the playoffs again.
Well, Snake, before I ask you what you think the Broncos should do the rest of the way, I just real quick, and you guys have probably done this, I'm sure you have. I hadn't spent a lot of time looking at the 06 draft again and just kind of who was nearby. There weren't any other Pro Bowlers other than Mercedes Lewis at 24 from the rest of the round. But when you talk about those linebackers, solid players, guys like Chad Greenway, who played forever, Bobby Carpenter was out there, even Antonio Cromartie, who was a solid corner. Some of those guys that you could have added instead of drafting Jay, that Haloti Ngata was the very next pick. Oh, wow. He would have been a good fit in the middle of any defense as he was in Baltimore. But, we could do this all day with woulda, shoulda, coulda, coulda, shoulda, woulda. But the Broncos now, as it stands, pick at 51. They talked about running backs last night, George and Sean. What do you want to see them do with they've got a second, a third, a fourth, and then 3 6s, assuming they don't move around. What would you like to see them add in terms of pieces, or if there's a player you like say, running back from Arizona State that some people have high on their board in Scattaboo, but who do you like to see him get?
I would put, I'm not a betting man, but I had a feeling last night driving home and then getting here and thinking about, oh, wow, these kids went to bed. A lot of them didn't get drafted. 3 rounds happened in the first day back in my day. So like you knew for like half the draft, there were 3 rounds. People knew right away. You didn't have to sit and wait. Oh shit, I'm on the 3rd day. Now I'm on the 4th day. Oh man. So Scattaboo is going to be a Denver Bronco. And I think that the Broncos would be foolish. I'm going to say this. This is my feeling as a quarterback, that when you get in the huddle and you look around at the eyeballs looking back at you, I would be more than happy. And I would put him in any huddle I've ever been in. I would put Cam Scattaboo, because I know looking in his eyes, there's one thought and one thought only, and that's making this play the best play possible, no matter what it is, practice, walkthrough, whatever. So I hope the Broncos understand they're getting a full package minus the 4.340 breakaway speed, where if he breaks into the open, Saquon Barkley, he's gone. But who cares in this day and age? Like, grind their asses, have a guy that's going to punish the defense, that can catch the ball super good out of the backfield, and is a phenomenal pass blocker, because Bo Nix is going to throw the ball a lot this year. So I would say draft Scattaboo. Why not? He's a baller, straight up baller.
What about a tight end? They signed Evan Ingram, their joker. What do you make of the term joker? Have you heard Sean Payton talk about the joker a lot? The joker is like a tight end or a running back with uncommon receiving skills that you can use situationally to take advantage of defenses. Yeah. Does that ring, true with you? I mean, was Joker something that you thought about when you played a guy like that? Like you had Larry Sanders.
Yeah, Larry Sanders was one of the first Jokers,
right?
Yeah, Larry was a phenomenal, guy like that. Could motion out, run routes from the slot.
Yeah.
Was one of the nastiest chip blockers I've ever seen. I mean, he corkscrewed so many DNs back in the day, coming off the edge with a little shoulder, just pop. I love versatile players that you can get creative with. And we've seen Sean Payton do very creative things down in New Orleans with Taysom Hill. So if you got whether you call it a joker or a Swiss Army knife, I like Swiss Army knife.
Yeah.
You got a guy that you can do a lot of different things with and throw defenses off. And as you know, Nate, when coaches would put a play in and you'd be like, what the hell are we running this for? They say just because then the team that we're playing next week has to spend mental preparation and time on the field practice preparation to defend this, whether we run it or not, it's just throwing it out there. So I think the Broncos focus on whatever players at this point have graded out the highest on like their abilities to step up to the next level and draft whatever there is. If it's another corner, get another corner. If he's dynamic, we still need dynamic punt returners. We still need dynamic guys to go out there and make practice better and everything. So whatever they draft, I don't know their weaknesses down to the root like you guys do. Get the best player possible. And if you skip on Cam Skattebo, just be ready to answer the question in a year or two. Why you had a chance? Why didn't you draft Cam Skattebo? He is an all-pro. He's won a Super Bowl already with the team that took him because they're smarter. Why did you pass on this kid?
So you think he's a future all-pro?
Yeah, I think he's got everything you possibly would want in any running back ever.
Love it.
Certainly finding the hard yard. We saw that with the way that kid runs. He's going to get you the yards you need. Short yardage.
That's just the obvious. That's like saying those tires are nice on that car. Like the kid can catch the ball out of the backfield. Go look at his highlights. He made phenomenal catches. I mean, not just in the Peach Bowl, running that go route and catching that when he was sick and barfing on the sideline and could barely get up. This kid just has it. He's got grit and determination, but he also is highly skilled. And I'd be talking about this kid if he was a Tar Heel or a Wolverine. The fact that he's a Sun Devil doesn't change me at all because I watched him and I felt his energy in practice in the spring 2 years ago. It's like this kid comes in and the tone goes from here to here, no matter what you're doing. And Nate, the more tone setters you got on a team, the better chances you have of being successful because they set the tone on the walk from the bus to the airplane. They set the goddamn tone. I'm talking every tone.
I'm listening to one right now. You talk about the look in his eye in the huddle. There's another guy who had that look in his eye. He's joining us right now on StreamYard, Jake. So to have that eye, to know the eye, you got to have the eye, and that is your eye.
And you know what that eye's called?
What?
Eye of the tiger, baby.
Tiger. El Tigre.
I was Larry Sinners that told me that in Philly on the 2-yard line, my first live action in the NFL in Veterans Stadium. He looked at me like this, and I thought, you okay? What's up? You got something in your eye? And he's like, eye of the tiger, baby. Eye of the tiger.
Well, Jake, you got the eye of the tiger, and we appreciate you for joining us today on Off Field and talking about the draft and your experience as a football player. Come back around anytime. Come into studio, man. We missed you, and we hope to see you around. And real quick, what's going on with Umbo lately? The mushroom company that you founded and are working with.
We're talking to a lot of nutritionists, finding out what they need for these guys that are wanting and looking and searching for a little edge and a little extra boost in the performance and recovery that we provide and that mushrooms provide. But they're, what I worry about is the product they're searching for and what pops up and, making sure they know that we do have a very well-intentioned, pure, perfect product that we've formulated for this. So we're just working that realm there. And then also, trying to help people just feel better and function better, sleep better, recover better, introduce a food group that was lost back into their diet, and then they get to feel the benefits. So things are going well though. It's always a work in progress. But it's fun. And, being able to bring something in that's misunderstood, and sometimes got people's walls just go straight up when I mention mushrooms. I can feel it and see it and sense it. But others, like some of the guys last night at the NFL alumni meeting, some legends of the Broncos that are like, yo, man, this is the best I've ever felt. This thing went away. I'm sleeping better. My results on my blood are better. And whether or not it's all the mushrooms or not, it was the positive intervention that they allowed. So yeah, we're working on it, man. I'd love to come down and see you guys in the studio. Meantime, I'm going to go to the airport and pick up my mom and dad right now.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, getumbo.com, the website.
Yep. Getumbo.com is where they can find those products.
Check out getumbo.com. Check it out.
Right.
We got a lot of good deals. And play Eye of the Tiger right now. Go when you get in your car and you're listening, you get done with this podcast, play some Eye of the Tiger.
I don't know if we have the rights to it. I don't get sued.
Oh, do you remember when you did that at practice with your cadence? Oh, quick story about Jake. So we were doing like a walkthrough right before a game, and
Philly, right before Philly.
And it was a dummy call. So it was like hard count, but don't move. What is it? Hold your water. Like, what is it?
Yellow.
Yeah, but so he's just gonna do a bunch of stuff and don't move because we're just trying to draw him off. And Jake's like, hut, 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 hut. Hut, hut, hut. Everyone started laughing. You look over at Mike Shanahan. He's just like,
not laughing.
No.
Yeah, but coaches would get pissed.
Yeah, he was not one for joking around on.
You needed Mike McDaniel to be your coach because Mike would have jumped in and started singing with you probably.
Yeah.
Thank you for that memory, Nate. I'm really glad you brought that up.
Well, thank you for joining us, Jake. You have a great day. Say hi to your mom and dad, and go visit getumbo.com.
All right,
thanks, Jake.
peace, you guys.
Later, Jake. Cool, man. That was cool.
One of a kind, man.
Yeah.
But I thought, and I don't remember enough about the 97 draft other than it wasn't a great QB draft, and he still went second. And I'm not saying that I think plenty of people, obviously looking back, would have taken him first.
Yeah.
And he's right that the NFL did start to change because of the success Jeff Garcia had, because Jeff won a league MVP, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Did he?
Or he definitely went to a bunch of Pro Bowls.
He did.
Some Pro Bowls. Maybe he
Yeah.
didn't win an MVP.
Yeah.
Michael Vick comes along.
Yeah.
Now he's obviously the fastest QB we've ever seen.
Yeah.
But he was only 6 feet.
Yeah.
And it started to show you, and he was left-handed, which is not conventional. It started to show
Drew
you.
Brees.
Yeah. Then Drew Brees comes along, obviously a few years later. And since then, size
Caleb
doesn't.
Williams, probably the same size as Jake.
Yeah.
Even smaller, right?
Right. And Kyler Murray, definitely smaller,
Oh,
but Kyler certainly won some games.
Yeah.
And Doug Flutie was before his era.
Yeah.
Like I always think I was born too late. If I would have been born
Could have been a
before
quarterback.
segregation, I could have played in the NBA maybe, or Major League Baseball. Once they started to integrate, that's when my chances went down. Dave Logan used to ask me, like, how'd you guard Bob Cousy? I'm like, I would just make him go left. Because you get those highlights, Bob Cousy just dribbling with his right. But
Bob Cousy reference.
Jake maybe before his time by just a couple years, and it clearly didn't matter because Jake is a baller. And that's what he said about Cam Scadaboo. So as we look ahead to the Broncos tonight, they got to pick at 51. I got to scroll down to figure out the math on what the pick is in the second round. Is it 7? It's not going to be 72. I don't know what it is. But
while you look that up, why don't we check out George Payton and Sean Payton's presser? They had some things to say. Let's hear some of that.
Real Denver Post. I guess for each of you, just what'd you like about Jahdae? And you said you thought the board might come to you a little bit given how you had players graded. What were you expecting him to get there, and just what was your process sort of as you went through the evening?
I'm good. We weren't expecting him to be there. He was pretty high up on our board. What we liked about him is just, he's a playmaker. He's a football player. He's a fun watch. Sean, I did him during the season, then after the season, and Sean and I watched him
Netflix show
last week. We just couldn't stop watching him. Just the instincts, the anticipation, the route awareness, zone coverage, really sticky in man, doesn't give up many completions. I don't think he gave up a touchdown. We kept looking. The ball skills, in the run game, this guy's really good in the run game, really good tackler, really good blitzer, and just he plays all over the field. This guy's got really good football intelligence. So he just kind of fits everything we're looking for in a player. You talk about versatility, football intelligence, playmaking ability. He's just going to add to a really good defense. So we're excited to have him.
Sean and George, Zach Stevens from DNVR. Where do you expect him to initially play? Inside, outside?
Well, one of the things that was real apparent when we studied him, and one of the things that was attractive about the player is his versatility. Man, you see snaps, like you're following him all around the film, you know, his junior year, senior year, he's outside, he's inside. I think he's got great versatility. George hit on it. His football IQ is outstanding. And then there's some ties. You know, Vance's brother was his position coach. Now he's now at the Saints, but he's been his position coach for, you know, most of his career. So the versatility was something where you don't have to pigeonhole him to one spot or another. I might add that we are at a max with Texas players, so I don't care how good the next Texas player is. If someone comes in, someone's got to go.
On your left, Eric Delisle, DenverBroncos.com. Coach, you talked about him from a football standpoint, but from a personal standpoint, getting to know him, what were those conversations like? I think
Real
kind of
good.
an odd tweet, but Matthew McConaughey said that he's one of the best guys that he's gotten to know at Texas. I'm just wondering personally how you get to know him.
There's a ton of experience in that room. I think George and I are like pretty much on the same year in the league as far as coming in at the same time. This many drafts. We have scouts that have been in the room for 45 drafts. Like a bright energy to him. And for the first time, I've never had this happen where he politely asked, you know, when we're finished, could you guys put me on speakerphone? And after he finished with Greg, Mr. Pinner, we put him on speakerphone. He thanked everyone in the room for the process and talked about his mother and the journey. And I've never, you know, I've never had that happen. So look, you get various degrees of intel. You have the football on film, and then all the other things with his coach Sark, Vance's brother. When you have these ties, and you know he was an A+ learn, like in an elite interview learn, and then when you watch the film, you're trying to minimize misses or mistakes as best you can, and I could understand. I haven't seen any social media, but I could understand why those would feel that way. Darren Rizzi, his son, is an ops there with Texas. Like the amount of information we were fortunate enough to have, you know, we don't always get the same with other players.
Question for George, Chris Thomas, and Denver Gazette. How much consideration did you have in taking a running back at number 20 and not taking one? Does that increase the urgency to perhaps take one in round 2?
Yeah, there was a runner that we considered in that range. You know, I think that was more of a trade back scenario. We had some opportunities, you know, to trade back, but we feel good, you know, moving forward with, you know, like we've said throughout the process, there's a lot of runners in this draft. And, you know, you never know, but we feel pretty good we'll get a runner in this draft. There's a lot of them. And if there's not, that you know, we'll sign one after the draft. We'll sign a free, you know, there's a lot of good players left in the draft, and we feel good with where we're at. You know, a lot of offensive players, a lot of weapons left. And so we got a weapon on defense in the first round.
This is for Coach Troy Rink with the Denver Post. This is for Coach Payton. Coach, did you have any temptation to move up as the tight end thing got a little different? You and George, was there any temptation to move up for anyone?
I think this was a year that.
Oh, you were filming it.
You know, it's interesting. Early in the process, you know, some of the early projections are where Mike guys go, but again, that's hard to project before combine. Before, like, all the in-depth evaluations. And so I think we felt like this was a pick at our number or possibly move back year based on how the board set. And George just alluded to it, that, man, where you're at tonight now and in the stretch tomorrow in the next 2 rounds, there are a lot of football players that would be, I think as you went around the league, would have similar grades. Obviously, the further out you go round-wise, it's kind of like buckshot, then it spreads. But I think you're hitting a little bit of maybe the honey hole of this draft in tomorrow's first and even into tomorrow's second and even into the third round. And so I don't think forward every team up there, every team was, they were all looking to come back. And the reason was really how the board was set, I think, with most of the teams in the league.
Yes, the honey hole reference. We wanted the honey hole.
You got a honey hole, you get a turkey hole.
He gave us the honey hole.
Jerry likes to talk about the glory hole, which is an oil. That's what the oil men call
holes in the
ground.
Stall, or?
When they might call that as well, but I believe the origin comes from digging for oil, finding it, and then reaching success. Thus, you have the glory hole, which probably inspired the other reference.
Yes.
The honey hole in this case talks about spots 20 to 70. They picked right at 20 and got a guy that they had rated way higher.
Yeah.
They're going to pick today at 51 as it stands. And if Travion Henderson's the guy that they want, and I've gotten some indications that he is, he's just not going to be there at 51.
How do we know?
I think that he's too
Is
good
he the
of
next running back that's going
I
to
think
come
he's
off
the
the
next
board?
running back off the board. He's ahead of his teammate in Quinshon Judkins. He's certainly ahead of Scadaboo a little bit. He's ahead of the kid from Virginia Tech, that the Tootin kid that had the fastest 40 time. He's ahead of the back from Tennessee. He has jumped ahead of his teammate because some people, Judkins is bigger, so some people thought he might make more sense, but Henderson's a better pass catcher, better route runner. So if Travion Henderson is going to be a Bronco, they can't sit on their hands and wait at 51. Does that mean they have to give up their pick in the third? Do they give up in their fourth to move up? I haven't looked at the points chart to see where they would be going. They have 3 6s. So if you're keeping track tomorrow, nothing changes. They pick kind of early around probably about 11.
3, 4. So it's 2 and 3 today.
2 and 3 today. Compensation picks at the end of the third round. They don't have any compensatory picks because they didn't lose any players for big money, and they also didn't lose an executive or a coach to another team. Like if Vance Joseph gets a job next year, that's something that people may not keep track of, but the Niners kept picking up compensatory picks when they lost Rand Carthon, when they lost Mike McDaniel, when they lost Saleh. If a minority coach gets hired, they get 2 third-round picks at the end of the third round, which have significant value.
Yeah.
But as it stands now, 2 is number 51. 85 is the pick in the third round. And then the 4th rounder and 3 6-rounders.
All right. So the Broncos have 51 and 85 this evening. We'll be keeping track of that and updating you guys as to how that goes.
Where do you want to see him go?
Offense. I think now's the time to kind of get some skill position players. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a running back and a tight end, or a running back and a receiver.
A couple tight ends with local ties.
Yeah.
It goes against what Sean just said, that we saw him say.
No, Texas
guys, but
Gunnar Helm.
Again, they already had LJ, so they've canceled each other out.
Well, that seems like a very Sean Payton thing to do, to be like, no more Texas guys when they know they want. They're about to bring
like, hey, we're not taking more. Just kidding. Gunnar Helm, who played for Dave Logan, won a state title at Cherry Creek, drove himself to a workout. We didn't. I think Terrence Ferguson probably did too. Local kid, Bo Nix's tight end 2 years ago.
Yeah.
All Pac-12, Heritage High School in Littleton. He and Gunnar Helm, he's rated a little higher. They're both in that end of the second, middle of the third, like that range is where they're expected to go.
Yeah.
If you look at, as I look at my best players available, they're both kind of in the late 30s, early 40s. Jack Beach is in there too. He's the one. Sorry, he's higher than both them. He's the one whose brother was killed. The TCU tight end who had was an MVP of the Senior Bowl, killed the night before New Orleans night before the Sugar Bowl was supposed to happen. So he's rated a little higher. But there's some guys. There's a running back from Iowa, Caleb Johnson, doesn't get as much attention. And then Scadaboo is right there, kind of in that same range with Gunnar Helm.
Third round.
Yeah, early third rounders. So it feels like it will be offense. Like if they take a guard or a D lineman and just stick at 51, I get best player available. But you're going to have fans up in arms that they don't take one of these running backs if they're there, or don't move a couple places to go get them.
Well, it's going to be interesting, but there's round 1 is in the books, and it's.
What's your grade? I give it an A.
So far, I give it an A.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be one of 4 positions. I thought it was going to be a running back, a tight end, a defensive lineman, or a cornerback. They got a cornerback, and I'm not saying I give it an A because I thought it might happen, but I just know the value of corners. I know that Riley Moss, like Jake said, is a one-year starter, and he didn't even start the whole year. You cannot bank on Riley Moss being available and being your starter for years to come. You have to improve the room, and they did so with the best player available. I'm a best player available guy.
And a premium position.
Yeah, exactly.
Corner is a premium position, and Vic Fangio will say it. I heard someone talk about Mike Zimmer used to always say it. George was around Mike Zimmer plenty. You can never have enough good corners because you really can't.
Yeah.
You don't need 3, you need 5, you need 6, just like pass rushers. You don't need 2, you need 4 outside, and you need 2 inside at least. And the Broncos have a lot of that. And so the rich getting richer on that side of the ball, but they play against Patrick Mahomes twice a year.
Mhm.
They're going to have to deal with Ashton Genty and whatever Geno Smith can give you twice a year. Brock Bowers, twice a year.
Right.
They're going to have to deal with Justin Herbert and now Omari and Hampton. And is Najee Harris a Charger too? I think he is, and I didn't realize that.
Wow.
So you need a stout defense, and they got stouter. Is that a word? They got more stout.
More stout.
I love the pick. I didn't think they'd go running back at 20. They couldn't get to Genty. They weren't even really talking about moving up, despite that being reported.
Right.
They were more likely to move down, which is what they said. But it feels like if they can find a way to land Travion Henderson, that might be a target for them tonight. And then we'll see what else they do.
Yeah.
Because it may not always go the way you want unless you move up to 33.
Right. And you remember when they drafted Pastor 10, they had already signed Ronald Darby and the other guy, Kyle, who was that?
Kyle Fuller.
Kyle Fuller. It's a 3-year, $30 million deal. Like, or maybe it was 1 for 10, but they paid both of those guys prior to drafting Pastor 10. And obviously none of those dudes panned out. So if you got a guy you love, and they clearly love Jadhae, they got him. And we should feel happy about that the Broncos brass, who does their homework, got a guy that they love.
And we're going to get to meet him here shortly. He's got a press conference in 2 hours. So I'm going to head down there, and then we'll have some of that availability, and we'll get to know this young man a little bit better.
Yeah.
And then this is what they do. So they bring him in, and then they stick him right back on a plane. Like they meet their coaches, they'll meet the owner, they'll meet whatever teammates might be around if guys are in working out or whatever. And then they head right back out of town because the Broncos have to get right back into the war room for the draft at 5.
Southwest, you think?
To Austin, you got a direct.
Group,
They probably paid for the upgrade at 1 to 15.
Yeah.
But there is a direct from Southwest. There's a Frontier direct. They might have sent you often might send the jet, and we know they have access to a few of them.
Yeah.
So he may have gotten the jet right to Centennial and then right back out. But
yeah, I think the Penners might have a couple.
They definitely have a few available. That's for sure. But then the rookies. So then you're right back into OTAs, and the NFL still has these weird rules where the rookies can't come until their semester ends or their trimester end. So lots of times, like Stanford guys over the years, like couldn't even show up till June.
Yeah.
Which it just seems antiquated and NIL when guys
like,
are on
what's up with
online
school,
classes.
Man, like who wants to finish school and get a
No, just letting
degree?
school dictate how you're going to spend your time. It's your job to finish classes, but the NFL shouldn't give a damn at that point. And these kids have been making plenty of money in some instances. But so their mini camp almost certainly is going to be Mother's Day weekend. So not right now, obviously, not next weekend, but it's typically that weekend after. And then they just stay and are into OTAs.
Yep. Well, the Broncos got a guy they love, and I got a guy I love, Brandon Krisztal. He's Brandon Krisztal. I'm Nate Jackson. Round 1 of the books, round 2 today. This has been Off Field Guerrilla Sports. Stay tuned. We're going to keep you updated. See you guys next time.